And welcome to the review video, I guess, of Chapter 2 of Halo the Rubicon Protocol. So I have just read the chapter, so if you haven't read the chapter, then just pause the video, read it now, because we are going to be going into heavy spoiler territory as we look at literally everything that happened in this chapter. So I got some feedback from the last video. It seems you guys liked the fact that I broke some stuff down, said what was in what previous games or novels and things, just so you know what's been going on a bit more if you haven't, or if you're not familiar with certain parts of the Halo lore. So I've kind of done a bit more of that for this video. Hopefully this is okay and not in too much. So we're going to start off, what characters do we have this chapter? And then we'll go through some other stuff, and we'll go through the actual what really happened in this chapter. So we've got the main focus of this chapter is Nina Coven. I hope I'm saying that correctly. We briefly met her in the previous chapter, and we speculated that she was the leader of Fireteam Shadow, and that seems to be confirmed in this because they refer to Fireteam Shadow as her fire team. So sounds like it's her fire team specifically. Finding out that she uses Stormfall class Mjolnir, has an AI named Mouse, has a very stubborn personality and is not easily argued with, which kind of ties in with having a stubborn personality. And she seems to be an ideal soldier because she can feel the loss and the pain. She doesn't want to lose people, but she has the ability to compartmentalize it and not compromise any operations and can deal with it. We also have the new character introduced, at least within this novel, of Henry Malik, who is a Spartan 4, pilots a Saber. We'll get more into Saber in a minute. And as part of Fireteam Windfall, helping to clear a path for survivors of the Infinity who are fleeing the battle in space and going towards Zeta Halo. He was in, or at least mentioned, I can't remember if it was just if he actually spoke or anything, in the Halo Infinite audio logs. So we have kind of met this character before, but not in this novel specifically. We also had the return of Spartan Stone, who was obviously the focus of the previous chapter. Not so much in this chapter. She has a couple of lines of dialogue at the end, but that's about it. Just sort of chatting with Nina Coben about possible rendezvous points and that kind of thing. So definitely not the focus. I assume we're going to be going back to Stone at some point later in the novel, probably. I speculated in the last one that it could be a split chapter between the UNSC and Banished, but it could be split between maybe the different fireteam members, and eventually they'll kind of come together, sort of ODST style, I guess. Eric Bender, who appears to be, well, simply a barber. That's all we really know about him. He was a barber on board the Infinity. That seems that any specialist serving on board a UNSC flagship has to have at least some basic training, probably as part of the military in some way, shape, or form. I'm not sure how it works with specialists and things in the real-world military, so if someone could let me know in the comments about how that would work, then that would be quite interesting. But he's a barber. That's the main thing. Barber who doesn't know how to fight that well. Though we can use a gun, so it's not totally useless in this situation. And we also have Gavin Joe, who is a mortuary specialist, definitely not enjoying the situation they're in, sweating, crying, and just generally probably not wanting to be hunted and eaten alive, which, you know, that's fair enough. And we know that he's a petty officer, 3rd class. I believe within the Navy is what they said on that one. And we also have Spartan Griffin, who is the leader, by the look of it, of Fireteam Taurus. And we had Fireteam Taurus escaping the Infinity in the previous chapter. Didn't really get any details about their characters, though. Now, Griffin, I do remember, is in Halo Infinite as a character. He, if I remember correctly, the Chief finds him being tortured by the elite Chaklock, and then Griffin dies. Like, Chief, you've got to save everyone. And just dead, so rip Griffin, I guess. But we're going to get his backstory, I suppose, in this, or at least part of his backstory. You got him and his fire team, so that's kind of cool. So that's the characters that we've got in this chapter. Not that many. There's also a few like nondescript, unnamed, random Navy or Marine personnel around who are just there to fill out some of the extra fodder. Then we're going to move on to different vehicles that were in the chapter. I'm kind of just trying to split some of the stuff up and get where we've seen stuff. So, we have got mentioned in this chapter the drop pods. Now, drop pods are nothing new in Halo. We've seen those in tons of other games. But specifically, this one is identified as an M9407 single-occupant exo-atmospheric insertion vehicle. That's a hell of a mouthful to say, honestly. But we've seen that specific type before in Halo 5 Guardians as the drop pods that's used in the Warzone multiplayer mode. And I believe you can also use them in Forge as well, or at least see them in Forge, spawn them, I believe. They're also in the Infinity Briefing Packet, which came with one of the great special editions of Halo 4. Not in-game, obviously, specifically just like a extra lore packet thing that you got with it, with the actual physical copy of the game. So we also have sabers mentioned in this chapter. In fact, I mentioned sabers earlier with thingy, whatever the name is. I have notes written down because I'm not memorizing all this stuff. Henry Malik, there you go. And so, yeah, the saber, as far as we're aware, the ones in Halo Infinite are FSS 1000 anti-ship space planes, and they are the same ones that we've seen previously in Halo Reach. In fact, you literally flew one in Halo Reach, and you can also see a couple of them docked in Halo Infinite's multiplayer maps as well. Then moving on, we've got the Phantom, which we obviously saw in the previous chapter as well. Now, there are phantoms, banished phantoms specifically, in Halo Wars 2 and Halo Infinite. Have been identified as Eklund-Dal Workshop Warrior Transports. And as far as we can tell, they're meant to be the same ones between Wars and Infinite, but the ones in Infinite just have slightly different armaments. Whether that'll be clarified as a subtype or anything in the future, I don't know, but at the moment, as of recording this, it's an Eklund-Dal Workshop Warrior Transport. Or Eklund-Dal Phantom, or whatever the hell you want to call it. So, we have seen them in Halo Wars 2, but they were only in multiplayer game mode. And obviously we've seen them in Halo Infinite, the actual campaign, because they are the main dropship used in that campaign. Probably should have led with that, but here we are. We've also got Vanished serifs, which were mentioned in this chapter and the previous one. Now, we don't have any kind of specific identification for this type of serif. There have been at least 2 types of serifs in previous, lore. But the one that one that's been identified as a banished serif was in Shadows of Reach, and that was said to be a Morsum pattern, which is interesting because that's what the Covenant use, and usually the banished modify them. But we do know the banished do reuse Covenant technology as well, even in Space Form, just repaint it. So it is very possible that the banished serifs aren't their own ones; they are just repainted Morsum patterns, which we have previously seen in Shadows of Reach and Divine Wind, at least in the banished configuration. I believe in the Covenant paint of that, we've also seen them in like Halo Reach. I'm pretty sure it was like Reach onwards. Any serifs you see at that point is a Morsum pattern, I believe, from the game. The other ones are Kai pattern, I think, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure. We also had identified in this chapter an RLT85 Shuttle. Now, that we haven't really seen before. We have seen it, we've had it mentioned in the Infinity Briefing Packet that came with Halo 4, but that's about it. We don't really know much about it. So it's a shuttle. It flies, it carries people. That's pretty much all I know about this thing at the moment. Maybe we'll get more technical specs on it as we go, but the shuttle crashes, yes, good English there. Crashes in the chapter, so we're probably not going to get much more on that one, at least yet. And we've also got the Banshees. Now, we're presuming that these are Kaelan Workshop attack flyers, because those were the ones that were previously seen in Halo Infinite, and since Halo Infinite is on Zeta Halo, and this is on Zeta Halo, it's probably the same type of Banshee. And it's probably not the other type of Banshee, which we've seen with Banished in Halo Wars 2, which is a different type of Banshee, so that's another conversation. I've also got some weapons identified in this chapter. Specifically, the S7 sniper rifle is mentioned. Now, presumably that is meant to be the SRS-99 S7 sniper rifle, which is the sniper rifle seen in Halo Infinite. And as far as I know, it's not in any other stuff. Obviously, we've got other sniper rifles, but not that specific type of sniper rifle. We also had, quite a surprise to me, mentioned the plasma rifle, which I'm very happy about because the plasma rifle is probably one of my favourite weapons of the classic Halo games. Now, whether it's the exact same type of plasma rifle or if it's a new type is not made clear, but since they've just called it the plasma rifle, I'm gonna go on the assumption that it is meant to be the same type of plasma rifle. It's being wielded by Sankheili as well, so I'm assuming it is an Okada Far pattern plasma rifle, which we've seen previously in Combat Evolved 2, 3, Wars, Reach, 4 briefly in a cutscene, and Halo Wars 2 as well. There is also like the brute variant of it, but that's the Bloodhound, and that's a whole other thing. It's also in a ton of the novels and a ton of the comics, so I'm not going to go through every single novel and comic that it's in, or we will be here for the next decade. So moving on, we also have the Energy Sword, which is in this chapter. The Energy Swords are obviously nothing new to Halo. They've been in it since literally the first game. So I'm not going to go into every single appearance of every Energy Sword, but the one seen in this chapter, I'm assuming is the Maluth Kelos pattern Fireblade, because that's the one that's in Halo Infinite, and these are identified as the same enemy types as the ones seen in Halo Infinite, so I'm assuming it's the Halo Infinite sword, in which case we haven't seen it in anything else other than Halo Infinite. We also have the MK50 Sidekick, which is the pistol you've previously seen in Halo Infinite, and that hasn't been in any other Halo stuff as far as I'm aware. We've got the BR-75 Battle Rifle, which is the battle rifle from Halo Infinite, but it has also been witnessed before Halo Infinite in the novel Shadows of Reach. And finally, we've got the M11 Combat Knife. Now, these combat knives are a bit more of a pain in the ass to figure out which ones are what, because a lot of the time in Halo Media, they literally just call them a combat knife. There's no identification. So the M11 Combat Knife, the only other known example I can think of where we've had an identified M11 is Halo 4. It's the one that the Spartan 4s use in multiplayer. So I have no idea if that's the same one that's used in campaign, if that's the one they used in Halo 5 as well, because at that point it just goes back to being called the combat knife, not the M11. So it's very difficult to figure that one out. But we've seen combat knives like that in previous games as well, like Halo Reach for assassination animations and stuff like that. But the unidentified one I can give you is Halo 4. That's it for the identified weapons. We've also just got species as well that we've had in the chapter. We've got human, Sankheili, and Jiralhane who have appeared. That's about it. I mean, if you don't know the, I guess the main names for them, Sankheili are the elites and Jiralhane are the brutes. We don't really see too much of them. It's mostly focused on the human side, but they're in there. And I probably don't need to tell you which ones they've been in because you probably know the species by now if you're even watching this. Now, for what's been going on in the actual chapter itself, firstly, the date. It is set on December the 12th again, exactly the same day as Chapter 1 is, so presumably a lot of this is happening side by side with it, as Sohn is getting off of the Infinity in Chapter 1. We've got Coven getting off of the Infinity in Chapter 2. So we've got the Infinity is gone. At least 7,000 people have been scattered. We still don't know anything about casualty numbers yet. We know obviously there are going to be casualties. We've witnessed some already in the novel, but how much is unknown. Anina has escaped the Infinity in a drop pod, which is a bit of a contrast to what Stone did. Stone had the lifeboat, so we've got lifeboats going on, drop pods, we've got pelicans evacuating, just everything that can bloody fly is leaving the ship, which makes sense for an evacuation when you're under attack. We also know that it's not just the Spartans that are being deployed in the drop pods. We've also got the ODSTs, which you would expect considering they are orbital drop shock troopers, so not really a shock that ODSTs are using their own drop pods to escape. At least hundreds of pods have escaped, although one has been confirmed to be destroyed by a serif. I will assume that number is a lot higher than that, but this chapter has specifically stated that at least one is destroyed. That's why I point that out. Nina deliberately aims her pod in a pretty cool move, honestly, at 3 phantoms that she can see on her general flight plan. So as she's going down, she's the phantom, and she's like, yeah, I could hit that. I could cause some extra damage for the banished. It's not much, but hey, one less phantom is one less phantom. And if you can like get a bit of a reaction going and take out all 3, then that's even better. We have Malik does attempt to get Nina to divert from attacking the phantom, but in the end she basically says, no, I'm going to do this anyway, and he's like, alright then, you do you, I guess, and knows not even to bother trying to talk her out of it because of the stubbornness that we mentioned earlier. 2 of the phantoms that she was targeting broke off from the attack and started just going off doing their own thing. One of them stayed on, but it is attacking the RLT85 Shuttle pod. They alter the plan a bit. Instead of going through the phantom, they're going to only go partially through the phantom. So it literally, drop pod hits the phantom, goes partway through, embeds into the deck, and then allows her to board the phantom rather than simply destroying it. Because I believe she's worried about the phantom causing damage to the shuttle pod and killing people on board. So she can board it and take it down another way, then that will be a lot safer for everyone. So she gets the pod inside the phantom, gets out, and the phantom is, not surprisingly, inhabited by enemy forces. But at least 2 enemies in the cockpit. They're not identified what species they are, who they are. Presumably they're Sankili or Jerohane, but they are not stated exactly. All we know is that they die, so rest in peace, whoever the hell the phantom pilots were. Phantom goes into a nosedive, she gets back in the pod to survive impact. So now they're all on the surface. In the phantom crash, you have at least 5 Sankili alive in the crash. Now, from what's been said in the novel, I'm pretty certain 4 of them are mercenary rank, and 1 of them is an enforcer, because 1 of them was described as having sort of crimson red armor, and in Halo Infinite, crimson red elites are enforcers, and then the other ones have been specifically identified in the novel as mercenary, which are the blue armored elites in Infinite. These 3 of them are armed with plasma rifles, and the enforcer is the one that uses the energy sword. Obviously, we've gone through the weapons earlier on, so I won't bother going through that. We also found out that Nina is using the S7 sniper rifle and has her sidekick as a backup weapon. She uses the sniper rifle to just tear the shit out of the elites. I kind of feel bad for them, honestly. But they shouldn't have gone with the Banished in the first place, so it's on them, really. We've got that Stone does get in contact with Nina Coven, so that's good. That was something I talked about in the previous chapter. I was wondering how good possible communications would be, whether it would be damaged, whether we'd just have Stone stranded, or whether they'd be able to contact other units. It seems that they are indeed capable of contacting other fire teams. That does give them a bit more of a fighting chance to at least coordinate their efforts. So that is good. We've got an unfortunate situation that there are some kind of banished AA guns nearby. Now, it's not specified what the AA guns are. There are several types of anti-aircraft weaponry in the Halo universe. Even the banished, we've seen at least, 2 or 3 types by this point. So it could be that they are, I think is it like gore spikes, I think they're called, in Halo Infinite? Or it could be an Antlion class type of weapon. Okay, the Mega Turret. It's not identified, so we don't know yet. Maybe when we presumably go and destroy those in following chapters, maybe we'll get some more details on what specifically those ones are. They get Fireteam Taurus is approaching the ridgeline close to Nina, which, I mean, they're seeing a down Phantom. They're probably going along thinking, yeah, there's going to be some bad guys in there. We probably don't want to approach that without having our weapons ready, but good old Nina pops out instead and is like, I'm all good, you don't need your guns, just put them down, it's fine. And I'm like, okay, we can chill. They don't actually kill her, because I was kind of worried they were going to open fire on it without actually checking it first, but that didn't happen, so that's good. Which means we've now got a little bit of backup in the form of Fireteam Taurus, with Griffin, I'm pretty sure, leading it. Going on while all this is happening, we've got the sky is just full of ships and debris just raining down, molten metal just screwing up the landscape, and just absolute chaos and hell within the air. So that's probably not going to be great. It's literally the very embodying definition of a war zone at this point, which makes sense because it literally is a war zone. Yeah. So they end up with a plan. They want to go toward where the crashed shuttle is, which makes sense. They want to check for survivors and maybe get some more firepower going on. But it can't possibly be that simple because they get some Banished incoming. Nina, before they even know who the else coming, just snipes a casual Jirahane, aka Brute. We've got at least 5 Banished patrols incoming, which is not good, although there are several Spartans there, so I'd say their odds aren't too bad. As long as none of the Banished patrols have Spartan killers in them, otherwise that's going to be a bit of a problem. So they split up a bit. We got Taurus going for the AA guns, while Nina is going to go for the shuttle. And then after they've rescued people from the shuttle, they're going to link up with Fireteam Taurus. So we've got Taurus and Shadow kind of joining together to take out the remaining Banished artillery. So we get to the shuttle, the hatch blows, survivors come out. So that's good. We know there are survivors, which is always nice. But almost on cue, we get a Banshee incoming, starts firing Fuel Rods and all, the good shit the Banshees love to do. But Nina manages to snipe the Fuel Rod weapon itself and then get into the interior, which then blows up the Banshee. Now, it's not the first time we've had something like that happen. I can remember way, way back in the novels, back in, I think it was, I want to say Halo First Strike, which is, I think, the 3rd novel ever released. We had Blue Team do something similar with the Banshee, but I think instead of blowing up the Banshee, they managed to get a sniper shot inside the Banshee's carapace, and it, literally minced the driver instead, or pilot, I suppose. So, similar but different results, I suppose. So yeah, most of the people in the shuttle have survived, but unfortunately the pilot is dead, so that's one less that can give us any support. But hey, at least most people are alive, I guess. And that's where we start meeting Eric Bender, and we've also got good old Gavin Joe as well. So, our good old friendly barber, Eric, gets an M11 combat knife, because apparently he didn't need a gun. Although I suppose they haven't really collected any guns yet, that's what they do after that. After they got all the weapons, they give a BR-75 to Gavin with a great new assignment, which sounds great, which is point and shoot. And support staff can't be assigned to a flagship without some training. I think I touched on that earlier, but that was an interesting point that I liked. I mean, it makes sense. You want everyone on board your flagship to be at least combat ready in some way. So further communication with Stone. There is no official rendezvous point. There is no contact with Infinity Command. There's no central command structure at this point. Everyone's just scattered and trying to survive on their own. So without a rendezvous point, they are just trying to get in cover. So they're going to find some cover in the mountains or the hills and that kind of thing, where they're hoping that they can regroup with Stone. And then, once they've regrouped with Stone, they can leave the... Oh god, my glasses deciding to fall off, that's fun. They can leave the Marines, Navy, all the people who survived the shuttle with Stone, and then that leaves Nina free to go and help with the Banished AA artillery stuff. And that is pretty much everything that's occurred in this chapter. I mean, I quite like this chapter. We had a bit more going on. Like, the first chapter, I get it. They were just introducing all the characters. Like, literally the whole chapter was just they flew in thing down to Zeta Hilo. The end. Whereas this one, we actually had a bit more of an expansion going on. We got some new characters involved, which is cool. Hopefully we'll get some more details on all of them. I'm interested in where the plot with the barber's going to go, because it's kind of interesting having characters like that. So we've had plenty of situations in Halo where we've got Spartans under fire, we've got Marines under fire, we've got ODSTs, we've got the Navy, etc, etc. But I can't think of a single instance where we've had a barber in a war zone. So I'm curious where we're gonna go with him. Is he gonna be a liability? Is he going to prove himself to be some kind of uncanny natural warrior that just casually charges elites with his bloody combat knife and just gouges their eyes out? I have no idea. But I'm looking forward to find out. Maybe he'll save Murphy, and then Murphy will be back, and I'll be happy. There's no mention of Murphy at all in this chapter, which is a very sad thing. But hopefully Murphy's okay. I don't know what I'll do. I'll riot or something if he's not. It's fine. Yeah, I like that we've also got some ties to Halo Infinite now. Like, they're actually using the enemy classes of Halo Infinite in the novel. Because a lot of the times, other books can be kind of vague. They'll just say, like, oh, yes, it's an elite, or it's a drone, or something. But this one actually goes as far to identify them for Halo nerds like me. So saying, like, it's a Halo mercenary. Well done, brain. It's an elite mercenary. Like, okay, I know them. And like, it's a red armored one. Okay, we know who those are as well. That's fine. Like, I like those kind of details. I'm sure I'm not alone on that. And then there's other people who probably couldn't give a shit about those kind of details. But hey, that's just who I am. Yeah, so looking forward to reading chapter 3. Hopefully I'll be able to read that pretty soon. And we should be getting into it, unless we're going to get another perspective. I don't think we are, because I feel like if we're going to have more than just the two perspectives, it could get a bit kind of annoying having to switch between all of them. So hopefully we're going to go back to Stone, maybe see what's going on with her, or maybe follow them as they take on the banished AA guns, something like that. Get some ground established, and then hopefully they can start maybe doing some counterattacks against banished forces. I know it's probably not going to be for a while. So we know at some point they're going to end up obviously making contact with Escharum of the banished, etc. Because I remember that being in the Halo audio logs. I still need to listen to all the Halo audio logs, Halo Infinite audio logs. That will happen on stream at some point. We'll get there. Maybe I'll do it as a YouTube video. That probably makes sense too. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this, guys. Obviously, if you've got any more feedback, then feel free to leave it in the comments down below. I would really, really appreciate that. Like the video if you liked it, because that just gives me feedback as well. That's really good. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if you would like to. Up to you, please. Yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys in the next chapter. I still haven't got a regular schedule for when these actually are coming out. I'm just doing them as and when I can, because I don't really have much in the way of free time at the moment. But yeah, hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. So thanks for watching, guys. Till next time, take care.